Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about this really bizarre idea that grains are bad for us. And really the only fringe groups you see holding on to this are certain, ketogenic groups, and then people who have struggled with IBS and gut issues, but that is oftentimes a result of bad lifestyles that they live that have created problems that they can eventually heal if they resolve this. Many of those people are concerned with, say, the fiber in grains. But generally speaking, there was a fad that started about, 20 or 30 years ago. There were some pseudoscientific writers and everything who had things like this book called Wheat Belly and other stuff to where they tried to link grains and agricultural society with all these modern diseases. And the reality is none of it's based on science, none of it's based on reality. All the epidemiology has shown it to be just completely incorrect. In other words, societies that have sustained on large amounts of whole grains and even white rice actually tend to have really low diseases. And most of the groups of people who have the diseases these people are usually talking about eat large amounts of really, really refined carbohydrates, large amounts of fat, okay? And really refined, I'm talking not necessarily refined grains so much as refined sugars, large amounts of refined oils, and then in particular large amounts of animal fats, right? That is kind of the combination for obesity, heart disease, cancers, all these other things. It has literally nothing to do with grains. It has to do with excess saturated fat, excess refined fructose, all of these things combined together. Okay, and that is what the data shows. And the reality is, many of these groups of people, they always make reference back to certain points. But the thing is, if their points held true, you would see it in the epidemiology and research. And people always say, well, you can't use epidemiology to prove causation. That's true. But we can use it to find correlation. We can absolutely use it to find correlation. And if correlation does not exist, you don't bother to look for causation. Right? In other words, in populations that eat large amounts of whole grains, whether it's inside of a given society, such as individual studies looking at that, or cultures that do, you generally see low rates of disease. Okay? All right? So accordingly, we don't have any correlation. We have an inverse correlation with most of these diseases we're talking about with whole grain intake. Right? Groups of people, whether it's, again, people who make these choices inside of a society or whole societies as a whole, that eat large amounts of whole grains tend to have low rates of obesity. They have low rates of diabetes. They have low rates of cardiovascular disease. These are our primary killers. And what people need to understand, any other health concerns that you may be worried about appearing are minor in comparison. In other words, let's assume that 1% of the population may have some sort of problems with grains. Okay. But if you're that specific population, then you see a dietitian or a doctor about it, and you may have to adjust and figure out what's going on, and it could be gut damage or whatever. But as a whole, the society is still better if everyone continues to eat whole grains. Even if that 1% of the population that suffers a disadvantage had to keep eating them, by and large, the rates of disease would go down. And that is exactly what we see. Okay, it's exactly what we see. Of course, an example would be someone with celiac disease. Obviously, they can't eat gluten. But that's not all whole grains. That would be wheat, barley, oats. Okay, they have to avoid those things, obviously. But by and large, even if whole grains were kept high in the society, even if the celiacs continue to eat them, collectively, the overall averages would still be much better health. Same thing. People in these groups will talk about anti-nutrients, but that's an idea they're coming up with. They're like, oh, this problem with this anti-nutrient will cause this malabsorption or these oxalates and so on and so forth. Okay, that's fine. That's your hypothesis. But you don't see it creating a larger health problem. Whatever potential negatives you think some pathway exists for these, by and large, the overall effect is positive. Okay? Let me put it this way. Let's say that you're doing a budget and you're doing your ins and outs for your budget every month, and you have your budget and you're like, oh, well, any money coming in is good and any money going out is a potential negative. And you find some stuff that is causing money to go out. But your net budget improves. Okay? You're still looking at the sum total benefit. Well, I'm still putting money away into savings every month, so I'm doing pretty good. And you have to look at these little minor hypotheses that, oh, well, maybe there might be slightly less zinc absorption or something because of whatever is going on. But then you find that many of these anti-nutrients have enormous health benefits. Okay, you balance it all out and go at the end of the day, because almost everything that we eat, we can find something negative with it. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is. The most healthy foods you can find in the world, you can find some minor issue somewhere in the body with something they create. But that's not how we look at the totality of a healthy diet. In fact, that's insane. People who do that, that's a pathology in and of itself. Okay? That is generally some sort of mental illness that needs to be addressed. Because that's not how you look at the totality of a healthy diet. We look at all of our foods, the sum total of what we eat, and then say, all right, the net positives outweigh the negatives. Because we have to eat, and people need to be clear. You will die if you don't eat. And grains in general, in particular whole grains, the overall sum total of the data would suggest that they are far better for health than they are any negatives towards it. And people forget, they say, well, we've only done whatever for thousands of years, but isn't that irrelevant? Because that's not how we determine what's healthy. That is literally like saying, we have not been using antibiotics very long, so I'm not going to take antibiotics. We haven't used them for 100,000 years. They're a very recent occurrence, so I'm not going to take any antibiotics. Okay, that is the level of logic. That is actually stupid. Okay, and I think most people would hear that and would say, yeah, that person is stupid. So when you say there are large amounts of health benefits to consuming grains, even though we didn't eat as many of them, because we did eat tons of them in Paleolithic times, we still ate them, that's what all the records show. But step back and ask yourself, is that an intelligent thought process? Like, is that really how things work? I mean, because if you use that same logic, you'd never take an antibiotic. You would never drink clean drinking water, because we drink dirty water forever. Like, we drink water with sewage and whatever and animal poop. We didn't filter it and any of that thousands and thousands of years ago. We just drank it. Parasites or whatever. And we didn't have clean drinking water, so I'm not going to drink it today. That's the same level of logic. And when you realize that, hopefully a light bulb turns on for people, because I think most people listening are reasonably smart. You're not dumb. Come on. You're not dumb. So, take it that way. Plus, consider the fact that gene flow has impacted us in such a way that everyone that we descended from for thousands and thousands of years has been part of agricultural society anyways. That's affected our overall gene flow and enzymes and everything anyways. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.